I am of two minds on this book. One is if I view it as an actual thriller. The other is if I base it on what it was trying to do. Today, we shall discuss both. Hola mi gente, welcome back. I am MsMalcolmHughes, and today we are going to discuss The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Harris. I'm going to tell you what the book is about, what I liked about it, what I disliked about it, and whether or not you should read it. So The Other Black Girl follows Nella, a young professional working in the publishing industry as an assistant who is tired of being the only black person in a non-labor role at her job. In this role, she's even tried to initiate diversity initiatives and advocate for the hiring of more black assistants. And when she feels at her wit's end, finally it seems as if her prayers and all of the pushing she's been doing has been answered with the hiring of a new black assistant named Hazel. However, shortly thereafter, Hazel begins to receive threatening notes telling her to leave Wagner Now, which is her place of employment. And this causes Nella to completely spiral and wonder whether or not Hazel is the one behind it, what exactly is going on, and what is the future of her professional life. And so that is the basis of the book. That's what the book is about. Now, I will say, from the very onset, Hazel was giving me suspect vibes. She really was. She came in and was just too nice. Do you know anyone who's just too nice? And I don't care who you are, where you work, what you do, where I encounter you, but if someone is overly nice, it's going to get a little bit of a side eye from me. It just reeks of a motive. I view myself as a kind person. I know that some people are just bubbly and friendly, but if someone is overly nice, it definitely reeks that you have an ulterior motive. And I'm not even saying that all motives have ill intentions, right? You may be well-intended behind your motives, but a motive is a motive and you desire something. And so as we navigate this story, we really do get to learn more about Hazel and Nella, and we also get backstories on other characters a little bit and how it links to modern day times and the situation between Hazel and Nella and what's happening with Wagner. And so we'll start with the prose of the book. I will say that I really enjoyed the end of the prologue. We really have no idea what's going on. I must say that where the book took me is not where I thought that I was going to go at the end of the prologue. All we know at the end of the prologue is that someone is on the run trying to escape, that she's recently been in the newspaper for some type of witchcraft maybe, and that she fled in the middle of the night with no light, and that she is itching really badly. That's all that we know. And that for me was enticing. That for me made me excited. I was like, where are we going with this story? This could be something really good. This could be something really great. I'll talk about whether or not it lived up to my expectations. I also found it suspicious in the very beginning that her boyfriend gave her a copy of Kindred. And that just immediately made my antennas go up because I was like, is he white? Because if he's white, that's suspect. I'm not gonna lie, that's a little suspicious, and it can be problematic and a red flag. Those are my initial thoughts. So I always have my eye on the boyfriend as well. Mind you, this is a bit of a thriller, so we're trying to figure out who did it and what's going on. So I have my suspicions about him, but I liked it. I liked that I wasn't sure. And then Kindred was also Kindred was like, I also felt like that could be used as foreshadowing in that moment. And I wondered where it would take us in the book. So the author kind of had me early on, honestly. I thought like the initial chapter was cute. I thought it laid a good foundation for the work culture there and for us to have a good understanding of what was to come. I thought that the interweaving, because they do work for a publishing company, I thought that the interweaving of the Chartricia character was just wild, and I appreciated Nella's frustrations in reading about that character. Kind of reminded me a little bit of American Fiction. If you haven't seen it, I went to go see it and it was pretty good based on the book Erasure that I do plan to read. I've heard that the book is a lot less jovial than the movie, so I'm really intrigued to see where the author actually took it. But that aspect of it really reminded me of that movie. And what I mean by that is how Black people are depicted in literature and what is more widely read. I also like that initially we had suspicions of Hazel, at least I did. I was like, is she off? There would be moments where like her eyes were vacant and she'd be talking and she'd be saying one thing and then she'd shift to saying something else. And she called it code switching, but it was obviously more than that. So I did enjoy that element and laying that foundation early on for us to be looking at, say, at Hazel with a bombastic side eye of, are you good, sis? Are you okay? I also enjoyed the aspect of watching Nella unravel and not having her ducks in a row and not being on top of things at work to show how all of this is impacting her. I'm not gonna get into my pros with Nella right now. I'm not, but so I'm gonna keep it there. I enjoyed the deterioration of Nella in the sense of like actually watching it happen. Now, whether or not she had a hand to play in all of this, I will come back to that. Now, if you've read this book, then this is a spoiler. So if you've read this book, you know that Nella ends up kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. And I did appreciate that the foundation was laid, and it was really interesting with her background with like white men and what she was attracted to and how she said she'd never slept with a black guy. I remember just reading that and being like, ciao, ciao. So again, I appreciated the information we got about Nella and just watching her crumble. And not in a good way, because I wanted sis to win, but I don't know if she wanted that. I also like the suspense of like some of the minor characters like Eva and what was the role that she would play and what was the real relationship between her and Hazel, and it wasn't really clear, and all of that was interesting as well. So I did think there was I didn't think there was enough suspense. I did like that. Now, there are 3 different stories that are taking place at the same time, 3 different storylines, and they don't always flow, but I'll speak more to that in my cons portion. But I do think that I was always interested in what was going on and trying to figure out how it all connected. And so that was another thing that I liked. Now, the last thing that I really liked, one of the more interesting aspects of the book, was about Diana. We hear so much about her throughout one of the storylines, but we never really get to speak to her. And in this one section, we really do get to hear from her directly and how she feels about the decisions that she's made and the life that she's living and how it all panned out for her in the end. And she says something about how she wanted to remain well-fed and grappling with all of that. And I really appreciated that first person account of, this is what I did and this is how I'm feeling, and whether or not I stand by the decision that I made, or do I just feel like at this point it doesn't matter, it is what it is. The chips have all fallen, the cards have been played, and we all landed where we landed, and it is what it is. And so I really appreciated that. So those are the elements of the book that I enjoyed. Let's get into the cons. Let us get into it. And so, as I said, there were 3 different storylines happening. We get the storyline in the present with Hazel and Nella. We get the storyline in the past with Diane and Wagner and the folks from there and her publisher at the time. And we also get the storyline of the publisher that Nella's kind of obsessed with, the editor that Nella's kind of obsessed with and has modeled her career after. And there's always seems to be like trying to reach connections between Nella and these characters of the past and how all of what's happening there is impacting Nella, and I don't think it's always successful. And that was one of the things that I did not like about the book. I feel as if quite often it misses the mark. Like, the connections are loose at best, and so that was sometimes infuriating because you're like, how does all of this fit? And even in the end, when the big reveal occurs, it leaves too much to the reader to like really connect. And I'm not someone who needs an author to spell everything out, but I am someone who prefers for an author to get their point across fully. Another thing that frustrated me a bit was how gullible Nella was throughout the entire process. Like, girl, stand up, get a backbone. I understand that Nella was anxious and pressed and really desired to have someone else of color in her workforce, preferably black, but of color. And the way she just was just all out trusting and just leaning in heavily, and I get it. Trust me, I get it. And I can't even see if they had met in a more personal setting. This is profession, like this is your profession. Absolutely camaraderie, absolutely sis, what's going on, absolutely you want to make that connection. But we also gotta figure out, Nella, what's going on? Also kinfolk ain't kinfolk. So what we doing? And so for me, it was infuriating to see how easily Hazel was able to manipulate Nella. I was like, girl, get it together. And folks would jokingly say, maybe it's Hazel, do you think it's her? And everyone talks about how charming Hazel was, and I get it. But you gotta see through the facade sooner. Like, get it together, okay? And so for me, that was a very frustrating aspect of the book. I also didn't like the perpetuating of the diaspora wars when Nella was talking about whether or not publishing authors, black authors across the diaspora really counts as pushing forward black writers in America. And I understood the argument she was trying to make, but I did not like it. Another really big thing for me is that I feel like this book could have been shorter. I didn't feel like it needed to be this long. Certain elements and aspects could have either been cut out or been more fleshed out. And so for me, I'm just like, it's taking too long to get to the reveal. I need more. It's taking too long. It's just certain aspects of it, the payoff just wasn't worth it. So with the kidnappings, and then in the end, there's so many questions left answered. Because how did the girl who was kidnapped end up here at this whole other publishing company across the nation? Big question. What happened to Nella? We see that she ends up with like the same trajectory with the same background as the editor, Kendra Ray Phillips, who I was mentioning earlier. That's the one that Nella is really enraptured with and fascinated with, and really has desire to model her career behind. And we don't really get that. We don't really get answers. We don't know where Kendra is. We don't know what's up with Nella. Not really sure what's up with Hazel. Is Hazel the new girl again? It just was not clear. And so I didn't like that either. But we'll talk more about the ending. So what we end up realizing is what is happening is, and this spoiler alert, that black women are being manipulated through this hair grease. And the hair grease was created to make it so that black women no longer have to be so frustrated with the microaggressions and racisms and competition and other things they have to experience in the workplace environment. And so this hair grease is basically conditioning them to be able to be more palatable, to be more complacent, to be more passive, and to not question the status quo as much, so that they're not as easily angered and hurt by the oppression that they have to face on a daily basis. And I tell y'all, that was the reveal. I told the person who recommended this book to me that we might have beef, because I felt like the book had the potential to be great. Now I understand the aspect of comparing it to a perm, which is what I felt like the author was trying to do, and the connections they're in, and this is why I say I wanted to review it from two lenses. So let's talk about this one. So if it's the comparison to the perm, and how it's black women straightening their hair to fit in, to become more complacent, or to be more acceptable by societal standards, right? And what that does, and the passing therein, right? Or that seeking of acceptance, and how it's divided part of the black community. You know, there's a big like the natural hair versus unnatural, and what that means, and your connection to blackness, and all that therein, which unnecessary wars, but happen. And so I feel like that's what she was trying to go. That's not what she did. That's me making a connection based off knowledge that I already have. That's not what happened here. It almost felt lazy. The end, I'm not gonna lie, it almost did with the connection, what was made, and maybe that was in the editing process, but that needed to be fleshed out more, because what ends up happening is you get this very loose connection of these women who are in this room, and you're seeing that some of them have been manipulated over time based on this hair grease, how the hair grease has transformed over time. And when we see that character in the beginning itching, that was an early side effect, and obviously it's been improved, so now it just has a arguably pleasant smell. And we get to see the ways in which women have flourished in their careers based on this, but how they've also gone in and pushed out like every other black person. They can only be one, and they have to be the best, and they can then accept everything that they're conditioned to deal with. it was lazy. It was lazily done. That part of it, and I want to I feel as if I want to say something else, because if I'm basing it on that, I don't have great reviews of this book, because the connection wasn't done. Even the connection of Wagner himself and how he plays a role in it, loose, right? Pulling in Diana and her experience was a nice touch, but it wasn't enough. We needed more of her. We needed more of that background. We needed more of Kendra Ray Phillips and what was happening there. So everything was like loosely there. It was like half baked, or even 75% baked, but not 100% baked. All right. And so then on the other end, if I view this as simply a thriller, right? You take out the racial aspects and messaging that were obviously the intent but missed the mark, and you just take this as a thriller, as a whodunit and what's happening, and if there's a big reveal and if it had suspense, then it gets a better rating from me. However, the ending still falls short, and I say that for the reasons I stated before. On one hand, it's a clear indication that the cycle continues, in that whatever these women who were fighting against the OBGs, the other black girls, their mission has failed, or at least the short-term version has failed. Maybe they have a long-term plan with a different end game, but as of right now, they're failing. And someone plans to do a really big expose on it, and then the person who was going to support her is no longer gone. A new OBG comes in, is now her boss, and we assume that the story is going to get quelled or squashed because they've been informed, and now they're putting new systems in place to make sure that the information does get out to the world at large. Not a horrible ending, right? You see that, oh, this is still ongoing. But my issue is that it was a leap. We didn't get that connection from Nella to this woman trying to publish this story. It was just too big of a leap. Like, I get that it was like, oh, and this is what's really happening. But for me, I just felt like there was necessary context missing, or just context that I would have preferred. But as far as keeping you on the edge of your seat, really trying to figure out what's going on, I think it did a good job of that. As far as there being enough suspense, I think it did a good job of that. As far as maybe pointing out different characters and maybe more people are involved, because Nella's boyfriend was real quick to take Hazel's side. I didn't like that. And so, and even seeing what happened with her best friend, but we don't even get a connection with the best friend. What ended up happening once Nella completely chose to really like say, I'm okay with this, and to drink the Kool-Aid, we don't know. And so I feel like I just left with a lot of questions. So even for a thriller, it was cool, right? The ending just didn't hit for me the way that I wanted it to, but it left enough like, oh, this is still ongoing, but a lot to still be desired as far as context and background. And so those are my thoughts on The Other Black Girl. Now, thinking about this on the scale of my, should you read it now, or read it when you have time, or read it if you want, I would give this a oof. And this is why I'm torn. If I do it based on what she was trying to do, it's a read it if you want. Read it only if you want. If I'm doing it based on a thriller, it's a read it when you have time. So I would say this: read it if you want when you have time. Or read it when you have time if you want. It's somewhere between there for me. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought that I would, unfortunately. But if someone wanted to read it, I wouldn't tell them not to. I'd just be like, you know, manage your expectations. But that's it for me, y'all. As always, I'm MsMalcolmHughes, one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. There are tons of book reviews and more book content and videos to come. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share my videos so that others will have access to them as well. And until the next one, I am one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. Please remember to give time, to be kind to each other, and to have the very best day of your life on purpose. Peace, o double, adios, ciao.